skip it. How about that? And put that hat on, boy. No, you want me to leave it off?
No, you're good, dude. You do it, whatever.
Ah, there we go.
Perfect. All right. So now at least I know that it's recording because I couldn't tell if that I hadn't used Teams in a while.
I
Sorry.
got you. I got you. We ready, Big Daddy.
I'm ready.
Now we're ready. So you just kick it off, and I'll take it from there.
All right. Thanks, Kevin, for calling in. I love the fact that we tried this once and it didn't work, and now we're on our second take, similar to like that time. Remember I had that little Zune, like that little recording thing, and we did those
Yeah,
videos.
yeah. It
And I
looked like the old
remember,
Nextels with a big red button on it.
yeah, and I just remember like at one of the videos, it wasn't like technology today. This was probably 2012, where I think if you turned it, we had it turned like the wrong way for a couple of them, and they came
Yes,
out sideways, and we couldn't figure out how to make them.
100%.
Yeah, it's funny. So, all right, here's the thank you again for doing this. I really think you have one of the coolest stories. I know I've known you since I think since 2012, and I knew you and first met you as the golfer guy, but got to know you more about your upbringing and then your journey from BMX to baseball to golf to being really successful in the business world. So if you want to just take it step by step, and we'll just go through this whole thing of how did you become world like a long drive champion? How did you get drafted by, I think it was Arizona Diamondbacks,
Yeah.
and BMX, winning races. I think it's a really cool story, but so take it away.
Yeah, it's crazy when you say BMX. It kind of takes me right back down memory lane. But as a kid, growing up in a very, very small town, it was a rural blue collar town, but we lived in the country outside the rural town of Cedartown, Georgia, and we lived out in Antioch. And so I was the first one on the school bus in the mornings. I was the last one off the school bus in the afternoons, and we rode our bikes. I mean, it was we were outside from sun up to sundown. We used to ride 10 miles to town, for the jumps and the tracks we would ride on, and then we'd ride home in the afternoon. So we were definitely battle tested. We were fast, and I was always on my bike. And I grew up with. I like to say I had 100 big brothers, because everybody I hung out with was older than me, and I looked up to them. And those guys got into bicycle racing, and they were like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and there I was 7, 8 year old, and it was tough keeping up with them. So I was real fast. I was almost fast enough to keep up with them, but I was real fast for a 7 year old. And I went to my first bike race with them, and didn't have I didn't even have like a track certified bike. And Chet Cleveland let me borrow his bike, and I won. And it was amazing. I went the next weekend. They were like, "Hey, you need to go to a national. You're in the novice division. You need to turn expert." And my first year, I went from beginner to novice to expert and finished national 23 and won the state championship here in Georgia. And I was like, Mom, I want to get in the, top 20 in the country, and small town is like, man, we're talking about the country. And I ended up the next year, I finished national number 11, and I had sponsors, and they started helping me go to more races and bikes, and I had the uniforms and the matching bands and the nice Troy Lee design helmets. And then I got national number 9. And I told my mom I thought I could win the national championship in 1989. And so we really put in a lot of work. And, it's crazy racing because it was really a father-son sport. There was dads everywhere, right? They're
Yeah.
changing their sprockets, they're changing their crank systems, they're changing tires, they're changing everything about their bikes based upon the tracks. And my mom used to go around to these tents, and she would listen to the fathers, and the dads, and she would come back and say, "Hey, Frank Gregory or Eric Cunningham, they're running a 46-16, and they're really, catching these guys on the second straightaway." And believe it or not, my team that was, it was Sports Cycle, and it was out of Glendale, Georgia. Great family. I mean, I used to just get in with their family and go off, for the races because my mom had to stay back and work. And, Mike Stone, Matt Stone was like a brother. Margie Stone was like a second mom. And it was amazing, the brotherhood, the family, the chemistry in bicycles. And that was my first love. And it was nothing more exciting than being at the Grand Nationals, and them saying locked and loaded and, in lane 2, Kevin Bad Boy Bullard, in lane 3, and just going down the list, because it was the final 8. And, you'd have motos, and then you'd have 8s and quarters and semifinals, and then the main event. And I won a national championship, 11-year-old expert division in 1989. And I remember being in a small town. It was so cool. It was almost like we didn't have $2.95 to buy the magazines, right? BMX Action, BMX Plus, Bicycles Today. So we would go into local Eckards, which Eckards are not around anymore. And we would look, and I'd be like, man, look, there I am, man. Look at that. That was a triple, and that was, that track. And it was unreal as a kid. I wished I would have bought up every magazine I was in just to keep them and put them in a shadow box or put them, frame them. But back then, we didn't look at it like that. We were just, we ran around barefooted. We ran around outside. We rode bikes, and we never had a shirt on. And that's kind of what we did. And, bicycle, a lot of people today, I'm 47. So fast forward, a lot of people don't even know, BMX existed in my life. 2 years ago, I was inducted into the Georgia BMX Hall of Fame. Jeez. And it just kind of brought it all back, man. I mean, you're talking about almost 40 years ago. And people still, remembering what I did. I was a little blonde-headed, towhead kid, fast as grease lightning, and just the brotherhood. I mean, Mike Stone is still here, Rodney Johnson, Matt Stone, Shan Hatfield, Margie Hatfield. I mean, it's like it's unbelievable. And so now I'm part of the selection committee for the Hall of Fame. And, you fast forward to like 12 years old. I remember my dad saying, hey, you need to play baseball, football, and basketball. Bicycle racing won't never take you anywhere. And it's amazing because it's part of the Olympics today. And, I didn't know that. So I was like, well, I'll start playing baseball, football, and basketball. And, I did all the all-star teams in those sports. And, you thought you were good, in a small town, small environment. But I realized real quick basketball wasn't going anywhere. And a slow, short, white dude in football wasn't going far either. And I really focused on baseball. And, it's crazy because, if you go back and look, I remember when I was getting my letters in from like Georgia and Tennessee and Georgia Tech, and a full ride then was 60%. And I remember having a conversation with my parents saying, hey, I want to go to Georgia Tech. And they were like, well, who's going to pay that 40%?
Yeah.
Well, there goes Georgia Tech. There goes Georgia. There goes Tennessee. And it was like, you got to go somewhere where you're going to get 100% of your schooling, your apartment, your meal, everything's got to be paid for, because we don't have any disposable income.
Yeah.
And so when I went off to college, I strived very hard. And I look at the guys that helped me, that were pivotal in my success in high school. And, like Brad Campbell, he told me if I just learned how to keep my damn mouth shut, that I'd be a great baseball player one day. And I listened to him because he had that kind of respect. He had that kind of command on the baseball field. And then I look at Charles Culberson, Charles Culberson. What a story, John. You talk about people's stories, and Charles had just come back to Rome, Georgia, and opened up a hitting cage. And so when he would do his lessons, I noticed one night hitting in the cages, just a bucket of tokens and sitting there putting one in and hitting, that no one was running the cash register when Charles was doing a lesson. Well, I didn't have $30, $40, an hour to pay for a lesson. So I told him, I said, well, who runs your cash register when you're in lessons? He said, well, we don't really have the payroll to pay somebody to sit there at the cash register. And I said, well, why don't I come up here after school? I'll run the cash register from 3:30 to 9:30, and you give me a lesson every night. And so I was his, kind of like first student. And
Yeah.
we did that for about a year and a half. I got a scholarship, went to Armstrong State, played for his brother. We had a great career down there. Probably finished, I think I finished in the top 10 in like 7 different hitting categories. Got NCAA Player of the Week a couple times. We went to 2 NCAA regional berths, and just a great brotherhood, another great brotherhood. And looking at those guys, and so I was fortunate enough to sign with Arizona Diamondbacks after my senior year. And
So hold on, let me back you up 1 second though. Hold
yeah,
on. So part of like this taking a chance and taking chances and then, why not betting on yourself? So like just going back to the BMX stuff, I know I talked about this, recently with a couple of different, other people, like one guy that was, you know, he was he started playing golf when he was young because his dad played golf. And like golf is one that I feel like it's not like a 7-year-old kid's going to be like, hey, I want to play golf unless somebody's there to influence them. So like the bike thing, I get it. The older kids in the neighborhood, you're riding your bikes. And then, but you had to have, and you mentioned it and you've talked to me about it. Your mom like took the chance to believe in you and supported you through that. Right. And you mentioned all these guys' names and all these people's names about how like Culberson, like that's the guy that took a chance and started doing this stuff for you. And that's kind of the whole thing about this is like, hey, you know, there are some guys and girls that kind of like maybe made it on their own, but not really that many that didn't have help and support
yeah,
along the way. Right. So
yeah,
like that's a huge piece of this. So like, not that you skipped over the part where your mom was traveling with you all over to do all this stuff, but she believed in you and took a chance like, hey, he likes it. He's enjoying it. He's having fun. He's good at it. So I'm going to help support him. And how many times you hear these stories where, and I kind of experienced a little bit where there wasn't anybody that said, I'll help you or, I'll pay for you or I'll like, you're good at karate, but we can't afford it. Like, so I feel
yeah.
like there's a lot more of those stories than there are of like the successful ones.
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, and I sit here, I went to lunch today with my preacher here, at West Rome Baptist Church in Rome, and I was just literally thinking, but like when I look back at bicycle racing, it was almost, and it went through my entire career. And I'll tell you about bicycle, and then I'll tell you about golf. But like when we went to our first national, Sports Cycle approached me. So you had, a national was on Saturday, and then you had another national. So you actually had 2 nationals at one event. So we went to Jacksonville, Florida. I raced in the 8-year-old division, novice division on Saturday. It is absolutely unheard of for somebody to turn expert overnight and race in the expert division the next day. You would race the full year. And they were like, I finished like first in the main event. And they were like, look, you need to turn expert and we're going to pick you up. So when I think of bicycle racing, I know for a fact Mike Stone took that chance in me, Larry Vernon of Sports Cycle in Riverdale, Georgia. And not only did they, start picking up my entry fees and things like that, but like you couldn't win money. And I'll pick that same concept up in golf, but like I knew for a fact we couldn't just go all around the country because we didn't have the money. And so Mike Stone took that chance with me and thought, you know what? That 8-year-old kid's great advertising for my bike shop. And you don't think about that at 8 years old. You're thinking, man, I got a free bike. Look at my
Yeah.
uniform. Look at my
Right.
helmet. It matches. Look at my
Yeah.
shoes. And that's all I thought about. But, when you grow up and you got a family, you think of entry fees, you think of hotels, you think of gas, you think of meals, your bike. If something goes wrong with your bike, you crack a fork or a tire or a rim. I mean, I never thought about that because Mike Stone took that completely out of my life and off my family. And so I look back and I stayed loyal with him my entire career. And that's who I am. But, I had Cyclecraft call. I had Eagle Snacks call. I had White Bear Racing give me a call. But I stayed true my entire racing career with the guy that brought me to the dance. And
That's
that was
awesome.
Mike Stone.
Yeah.
When you go into baseball, I know for a fact Charles Culberson took a chance on me, man. He was like, "Look, I'm gonna let this guy run his cash." He didn't know me from Adam's House Cat, and
Right.
He was like, I'm going to let him run the cash register. I'm going to give him a lesson. And, the next thing you know, I mean, he turned me into a switch hitter. I was a right-handed hitter when I met him. And so, I just look back and, to your point, there's no way I could have ever done anything. One, the man upstairs, but two, just people, human beings that said, you know what? I like that guy. I like his character. I like his work ethic. He shows up early, he stays late. Things that I preach to my kids today. But the unique thing about how you go from bicycles to baseball that gets you through college, but my golf story was really life-changing, John. And I mean that because take a minor league baseball guy making $1,600 a month, and all of a sudden, I get a settlement because I broke my hand. I got ran over at the plate at spring training in 2000, or short season A ball. And I come home, and I'm all I wanted to ever do was join the country club and have a house at the country club. And I remember getting $120,000 for my hand, workers' comp. I was on the job, and that's what I did. I bought a house. I joined the country club. And I remember driving around with my 4-month-old and my broke hand, hitting a golf ball one-handed. And they were like, man, you hitting the ball 250, 230 yards, 230, 250 one-handed. There's no telling what you can do with both hands. And when I started rehabbing my hand, my hand got stronger than my right hand. And I was like, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to spring training 2001. Well, they didn't ever think I could catch a full season with 3 pins and a couple plates in my hand. So, you fast forward, I got out, I'm playing on both hands. I'm driving greens, 380, 390, 400 yards. And the local talk at Cherokee Country Club was, well, you can hit it long for Cherokee or Cedartown, but you can't hit it with those guys on TV. And I remember back then, this is 2001, the Remax World Long Drive Championship would always come on ESPN 2-3 days after Christmas. And I remember watching it. And I was like, man, I want to do that one day. I want to be under the lights and, just dropping nuggets. And I remember going to my first event in Atlanta, and the guys at the club paid for my entry fee. And that's kind of why I was there, because I wasn't going to pay $800 to go hit golf balls, because there's no way I was going to win. And I remember winning the Pinnacle Distance Challenge that night, which was like 10 grand. And then you got the top 4 of those guys got a exemption into the 48-man tour event. And that's 48 of the longest hitters in the world. And I was like, man, I showed up one driver. John, you've seen my bag. You got 15, 16 drivers, look like just a bunch of mushrooms out of a golf bag. And I had one driver that day, and I think I took second place. I don't know, $112,000, $15,000. And I remember telling my wife and the mother of my 2 boys, I don't have to work the rest of the year. We just won 15 grand, and the fact that I won money at that event, John, I was able to go to the second event. And I was at the second event, and I was looking at my entry fee, my hotels, car, I was like, if I don't cash a check here, I won't be at the next event. And this is in 2001. And I remember, finishing in the finals, cutting a check there, making some money. And I took my first trip to New York in 2001, the third LDA tour event that year. And it was like, man, I got a plane ticket. I got an entry fee. I really got to do good. And it was that, I remember Lee Trevino saying, pressure is when you're betting $1,000 and you got $80 in your checking account. I really felt like that's the way it was, man. It was like one more event. And then I had a 15-year career, won 9 championships. Corporate outings just took off right around like 2006, 2007. We did they took 8 fastest drivers of a golf ball and put us with 8 of the fastest drivers of a car, which was NASCAR. And my nickname was the Bull. I got paired with Brian Vickers. He drove the Red Bull car. And next thing you know, I'm begging corporations to pay me $1,000. Just let me come out and hit some golf balls and meet and greet. And I promise you I'll add value to your event. to doing 78 events a year at $4,000 or $5,000 a pop. Like, I'm still that small town guy trying to raise a family, and it's just it just happened overnight. And I mean, I just, you know, I remember, man, I still remember, and I hate to say it, I remember guys like you, man, because John Deere was one of my biggest sponsors, you know, and you guys saw so much value in what I brought. Man, I'd be up there Monday night doing a show, Tuesday night doing a show. I'd play in the Pro-Am Wednesday. I'd do a show Thursday. I'd do a show Friday, and then I'd come to the event Saturday. And I remember like Coal Valley, Davenport Country Club, TPC Deer Run. Like, I mean, we did that for like 5 or 6 years. And so you guys obviously saw value. You brought me back, but you don't know how much it meant to me just to make ends meet. And so my life and my story has always been, you know, make sure you give back, make sure you don't forget who brought you to the dance. And you and I, here we are in 2025 doing a podcast. Yeah. And I remember when it started, I was just like, you know, people like John Deere, people like Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, 84 Lumber, Yellowwood, Home Depot. Home Depot is another great sponsor. You know, we did that foundation tour to where, you know, they built these energy, green, efficient homes. And I mean, I went all over the country. I was doing 12 events a year for them. So it was just a blessing, man. I mean, and, you know, now I look at my last 10 years, 15, 20, or 22 years now in the insurance industry, and golf is still opening doors.
So hold on. Let me ask, I don't want to interrupt your story, but tell me about how, like, you like, let's go back to the Arizona Diamondbacks thing, because I think that's a pretty key part, that you started to talk about, you know, playing college baseball, but you got drafted and you were you know, in the major leagues, right? And then you talked about how you got hurt, but like and then you go home and you have to like figure out, okay, baseball's done. How did you get like good at all the other stuff that you do, not just hitting the ball long? Like, when did you, because when you do the show, to me, that was way more impressive, the stuff that you did during the trick shot stuff, than hitting the ball, you know, like 500 yards. Because, you know, and I remember having this conversation with you like 6 years in a row about it, how, you know, you show up, there was more pressure, you said, on you to hit a ball in the fairway for an event than at the world championships for a long drive.
Oh, 100%.
Pressure.
You know, and it's crazy, but, you know, one, I wished I'd have made it to the major leagues, because I would have never had to hit a golf ball. But yeah, I was in the Diamondbacks organization, and, you know, great experience, but then again, making $1,600 a month. I mean, it was tough. And it was almost like it just kept, you know, every Friday, can I make ends meet? You know, am I going to have to call home and, you know, borrow money? And so when I got into golf, it's crazy, because that is a pivotal piece. I used to watch the guys. Again, I'm looking up the big brothers that have been in the sport. You know, guys like Brian Pavlett, Mike Moten, Dan Beaver, Brian Nash, Vince Howe. These guys were great showmen, and they had paved the way. Jason Zubat. They were the guys that paved the way. They were the pioneers. And I would watch them do their shows, and I would go home and say, well, I can do that. And I'll put my little country twang, and I'll make some jokes, and I'll do this and that. And that was the fun part of it, man. You know, and I told somebody today, I never got nervous doing a show, because it was never scripted. I'd go off the crowd. I'd feed off people. We'd have people come out of the stands and volunteers, and we'd give out gifts for volunteers. And you and I did some crazy stuff that was such a hit and well received by the client.
Without a doubt. So, I mean, you could probably, you know, you were talking 13 years ago, going back to 2012. I can guarantee you, if you asked anybody that was at that event, they'd remember what you did there. They would definitely remember. But
you remember the guy that wore the V-neck sweater vest, and I was like, "Oh, you look like a guy that wears a sweater vest." He goes, "Oh man," you know. I said, "Come on, I need a volunteer." It was unreal. We really staged that well.
But I know, like, what I really want to know, and I think people would be interested in knowing is, and I tell this story every once in a while to people that I'm golfing with, and I only play like twice a year now, but like, how did you learn how to hit the ball through the plywood? I mean, that must have taken some time to figure out. Like, I can only imagine if there was video of you trying to do it. And I mean, I don't know, did you do it the first time? Like, that seems pretty crazy to come up with that. Or did you see somebody else do it? Like, how did you
Yeah,
come up?
well, it's crazy talking about that wood because there's a lot of stories behind the wood. So I saw some guys do it, and
Okay.
we went from a quarter-inch piece of plywood to a half-inch piece of plywood, and we knew the ball had to go, 200 miles an hour. The ball would actually noodle through the wood and then gather back up, and it was unbelievable if you watched it slow mo and the science behind it. But it was all about compression, smash factor, getting it through the plywood, but I'll tell you a funny story. We were at John Smote's event, or one of the Braves guys. It could have been Hammer and Hank Aaron's event, but I took one of my counterparts, Brooks Baldwin. So I was set up on one par five on 18. He was set up on another. Well, he thought it'd be funny to go buy a 3/4 inch, or a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, and we'd put it on the frame and put it down in the wood. And I got to the end of the show and I was like, yeah, we can even hit through plywood, half-inch piece of plywood. Ball's got to go 200 miles an hour. It's amazing what the ball is. It goes through there and you can't never put it back through the hole. Well, I hit that 3/4 inch piece of plywood and it went back in the stands and hit Marty Perez right in the damn knee. Marty Perez played for Atlanta Braves, a middle infielder, great guy, great golfer. It hit him in the kneecap before I could even look back where it went. And but it was just that brotherhood. We did that all the time. And good Lord, we still talk about those stories today.
Oh yeah, I do. It's so funny because I remember, you would travel up, and this was when you, I think a few times I think you FedExed your clubs up. Remember, like when it was like cheap to do, like they had a thing where you could FedEx your golf clubs or whatever. But I remember you would be like, all right, I'd pick you up in the rental car or truck or my own car, and we'd have to go to Home Depot and get that
Oh
piece
yeah,
of plywood, and then you'd
yeah,
have to buy the brackets, and I'd bring my
that's right.
drill, and you'd be screw the thing to the wood,
Yeah,
and
yeah, we did a little bit of prep work there,
oh yeah.
but
And
it,
then I
it
remember
was
going to buy balls because you didn't want to carry, 100 golf balls in your bag or whatever. And I just remember thinking, oh man, he's probably going to buy all these like expensive golf balls. And you're like, no, no, no. Uh-uh. You wanted to buy the hardest ball, and I can't remember what it was, but like whatever.
pinnacle gold, man. We used to
Yeah,
call it a pinnacle.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean they were a big sponsor for years, but it was a great ball. It was very consistent, especially for swinging 150 miles an hour, 215 ball speed. You wanted a hard golf ball.
yeah.
And so yeah, I mean that was crazy, man. Because a lot
All
of
right.
people, you could get those $12 a dozen back then. Today's $50, $55 a dozen for some Pro V's.
Now, another part that I think would be really cool for people to hear, because I've heard it from you, is just talk about and talk through how the long drive competitions work. Because, like, if you like you said, you see it on TV, and if you're just like a casual person, you see it, you're like, oh, this they like get up there and they just hit the ball as far as they can. But there's way more to it, and that's what I want. I think go into the details of all of it, like how it's timed, the grid, all that kind of stuff. And then I think there must be other standards like the club length, because I see guys now with like it looks like the clubs are like 7 feet long. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, that's definitely always went with the sport, but everything was USGA. I mean, so the COR on the faces, we measured our shafts vertical, which was, about a 2 inch difference from the way the tour measured at a 60-degree angle, but about 48-inch club. A lot of people, I used to get that all the time. How long is your club? Oh, I could hit it 400 yards if I had that club. And I'm like, here, go ahead,
Yeah,
swing it.
yeah,
Oh, huh, that went every bit of 240. But we did that to maximize club head speed. All these guys are so gifted. I mean, they can grab right off the shelf and, in your local PGA superstore and swing at 145 miles an hour with a 45-inch club. And I mean, I'm 47 years old today, play with Tommy Fleetwood Wednesday in a pro-am at TPC Southwind. And I mean, Tommy will tell you, man, this guy hammers the ball. I played, with Xander last year and JT Poston and Rory. I played with Rory 2 years ago, and those guys are like, wow. I mean, they start asking, you play 2-3 holes with them and they open up and start going, well, what do you do? And it's amazing. I mean, like even 20 years ago, the fastest guy on the PGA Tour swings 125 miles an hour, produces about 200 ball speed. And, let's say that ball flies 320 yards. Well, you take, a long drive guy that swings 150 miles an hour, launches that ball at, 12 degrees. His spin's 1900. He produces 215 ball speed. That ball goes 390 yards in the air. I mean, it's not even comparable. I mean, and like you go back to 2001, John Daly came out there and, did the Pinnacle Distance Challenge. There was 12 guys that went against him for $100,000. And I think Pinnacle bought $400,000 of insurance. The first 7 guys beat him by 30, 40, 50 yards. And no disrespect to John Daly, man. I mean, John Daly's John Daly. We piggybacked him that started the long drive tour. So it's just crazy, man. And then you look at the guys today like Kyle Berkshire and Justin James. And, I mean, Justin James' dad, Jerry, he was my swing coach down in TPC Sawgrass. And, I mean, what a great guy. He was a multiple world champion. I mean, just great competitor. But these guys have figured it out. And I don't want to get too analytical about, the shafts, but like our shafts back then would like CPM at like 268, 274. These guys are swinging 235, 240s today. And let me tell you how the sport has changed. So these guys are touching 155, 160 miles an hour club head speed, producing 230 ball speed on TrackMan. Same, system they use on the PGA Tour. And when I tell you, you hit a ball like that and your spin's right, your launch angle's right, man, that's $4 bills in the air. And, I mean, these guys are so gifted, and they've taken training and the physics behind, the clubs and the balls and just took the sport to a whole nother level. And, and I still love watching it because those are the 1%ers of all golfers in the world, regardless of how big the sport is. If our first place check paid $25,000, well, the tour pays $3.7 million. I get it. I get there's a big difference there. But when I'm talking about talent, these guys today, they are the 1%ers. And what's crazy is every golfer I know would lose a limb for 30 more yards.
Yeah, right.
They don't talk about hitting a 9-iron closer. They're like, how could I ever hit it? I hit it 260. Could you ever hit, help me hit it 300? Yeah, if you cut you cut that little pinky off, well, he'd cut it off tomorrow. He'd have surgery. So it's amazing, man. But those guys are gifted.
So tell me a little more, though, about the competition part of it, because I remember you were saying, like, you would do it in your pre-shot, you'd warm up and you'd say, okay, I got 30 seconds on the clock. So go through that routine. I think people would not want to know how that, it's not just you got all this time in the world and take your time and relax and get up there and hit the ball. It's stressful.
Oh, big time. Especially first couple of years you do it, you make the finals and you're like, if I hit this good, I'm going to make this amount of money. But when I started in 2001, the grid was 40 yards wide. That's tight. And it was single elimination, 6 balls, 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Yeah.
There'd be 2 or 3 guys on the, on the tee box. They'd say the grid is clear, hit away. And 2 minutes and 45 seconds goes quick. And I used to remember practicing. I could make it through the first 3 or 4 balls praying that I had a good ball in play and that I could build upon it those last 2 or 3 shots. Kind of where I made my reputation was my 5th ball. My 4th and 5th ball was when I always hit a big ball. And people always used to say that, I spray one left, spray one right because I was nervous. And then the 3rd one, I'd kind of bring it back in. And my 4th, 5th ball, I'd hit a big ball. But, it was crazy. And now you look at the sport and they get 8 balls. they're hitting on a 60, 70-yard wide grid and they've got 3 minutes. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's so much easier. No, it's not, man, because
Yeah.
the speeds they're swinging at, if you're off, I mean, by the tip of a pin, that ball's 30 yards right. Um, and so I don't think it did anything. I think the reason why they changed to double elimination, to a wider grid, to more balls is because you don't realize, when you're live on TV, you're hitting for $100,000. Or, I mean, back when I was competing, the world champion took home $250,000. I mean, it's $250,000. Sponsorships, corporate outings. I mean, it was huge. Um, I remember sometimes my hand, it'd be like this, and I would, pull it back, pull it back. Here we go, and um, it was definitely adrenaline. I mean, it was unbelievable. And this last week, playing in the pro-am at the FedEx, one of my buddies, I literally my big brother, or he's my big little brother, Brooks Baldwin. We were still talking about competing, and all these years we competed and traveled. He slipped up and made a comment this weekend. He said, "Man, I'll tell you something." He said, I didn't root for anybody any harder than I rooted for you, and I didn't root against anybody as hard as I rooted against you. And I said, wow, buddy, I didn't know all that existed.
Yeah.
And he said, man, I wanted to beat you so bad. And he was my best friend,
Yeah.
still my best friend today. And we traveled the world together, and
Yeah.
we split the hotels, we split the cars, we split everything. And we even had a deal back in 2006, 7, and 8 when we were hot, that if one of us won the event, we would cover the expenses of the other. And so, those kind of things never make it to TV, never make it, to a podcast or radio, but that's the brotherhood, man, that we had.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, but going back to the hitting through the plywood, and then, I remember like towards the end of there was like new management, I'll call it, and they were like, well, we don't know if we're gonna bring Kevin back. And then they brought in a guy that did trick shots and stuff like that. I just remember thinking like, man, you guys lost out on something really cool because the customers really loved it. But so some of those trick shots that you would do, I remember you had the that giant club that you could hit three balls at one time
Oh
and
yeah,
they would
yeah,
all it was just like unbelievable stuff. But
yeah. It was for years, man. It was how many different ways could you hit it 300? You hit it with a
yeah,
left-handed 300 yards, right-handed 300 yards. You'd hit it with a short club 300 yards. You'd hit it with a whippy club 300 yards. You'd hit it out of a sleeve. You'd take a sleeve of balls
okay.
and hit one 300 yards.
Yeah,
Um, you'd hit it off your knees 300 yards. A lot
yeah,
of people don't even realize you can hit it straighter off your knees, then you can't stand it up. So it was just, just watching those guys again, those pioneers that paved the way, and just watching them saying, I'm going to go home and practice that.
yeah.
And I mean, it
A
changed
lot of
my life.
practice.
It
A
changed
lot
my
of
life
practice.
hitting the golf ball. Oh, a ton
Yeah.
of practice. Eye hand coordination.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you some technical stuff too. But the funny part was the high tee, that club that you had with you'd hit it off of the what was it, like 3 or 4 feet off the ground, 3 feet off the
Yeah, oh,
ground.
yeah. Yeah. I
And you're
remember
like
you
that.
jumped out there and said, oh, I
Oh,
can
yeah.
do this. And I said, go ahead. I bet the shaft
Yeah.
goes further than the ball does. And the ball dropped right down where the
Yeah.
shaft was. And
Oh
the
yeah.
shaft went 30 yards out in the fairway.
Yeah. That was in private. You and I were on the hole. We were waiting for the next group to show up. That wasn't in front of
But
customers
we
or
got a
anything.
video. We
We
got
do
a
have
video
video.
of it.
Yeah. I think it shows up on Facebook every year.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Uh,
But yeah,
but
it was yeah, that was crazy.
I'm trying to think. There was another one I was going to ask you. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Okay, so yeah, like as far as like baseball swing or hockey players that kind of like translate from hockey swing to golf swing and baseball swing to golf swing. Um, Maybe for people that are listening and they're interested in that whole thing, how can I hit the ball further or farther, further? What do you think is, and I remember asking this, like, what do you think one of the key like things people could do to maybe hit the ball further? Like, what is it your arm strength? Is it your hips? Is it your knees or your, like your quads? Like, is it all this? Like, Because I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because you say hockey, and two of the greatest guys that ever competed in our sport were, Canadians. Jason Zuback, Jamie Sadlowski. I mean, big name guys, been on the TV, been on Golf Channel. I mean, Jason still does stuff with golf today, but both of those guys, had a hockey background. And then you look at somebody like myself and Dan Beaver and Pat Dempsey and Bobby Bradley. I mean, everybody had like a minor league or a baseball background. Some of them were pitchers, some of them were hitters, but it's all about to me, it's the fast flitching muscles, man. It's hand strength, it's forearms, it's that lower body, it's that core. But it comes down to hand speed to me equals club head speed. Club head speed equals ball speed. And then it's about really honing in launch angle, your spin rate, and after that, I mean, it's how far can I hit it? And every event we would challenge each other to. Well, Bullard just went 411. I'm going to need 412 to advance, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I can't hit it any further, and he's at 416, and all of a sudden you hit 422, and I mean, I saw that for 15 years, and
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. Guy, still today they say, what's the longest ball you ever hit? And I said, in competition, 449 yards. Well, Brooks Baldwin hit 470 that year. It's just downwind. It's a good, firm, nice fairway. And it's unbelievable because in Mesquite, Nevada, they had a $20 million soccer complex. And so at 300 yards to like 500 yards was just sodded grass. And it was unbelievable, when you had the right conditions, hot air, you get a little tailwind. I mean, the ball just would go forever.
So let me ask you this about the comparison to say like, okay, back in the say wooden club days on PGA tour, and these guys were hitting the ball, I don't know, 275 to maybe 300 yards. I don't know. But then, like you mentioned earlier, John Daly was notorious. It was like, okay, he could average like 300 plus on tour. And then that became like, okay, now what? What's next? Now it's like 325. And now Rory hits his like 330 or whatever. Or even like, I don't even know, Scotty Scheffler can hit it further, right? There's guys that can hit, what's his name? Um, DeChambeau, right? Like these guys are hit. So like comparison wise, when you were in long drive to hitting at 440, what are these guys hitting today? And then like kind of same story with the PGA tour. Like what are those guys now hitting because of technology, maybe the ball technology, the club technology, all the weightlifting, all that kind of crap.
Yeah, I think if you just go back and just look, like if you went back to the 90s in our sport, those guys were still gifted. They were the one percenters. Did they have the best technology? Did they have the best ball? Was it consistent? The compression of the golf ball? Those are the kind of things that have changed and gotten better. But I can tell you right now, Jason Zuback was faster in 1995 than he was in 2005. But he was still competitive, still winning in our sport because I think, truthfully, he won his fifth or sixth world title like in 2004, 5, or 6, right in there. And so he won his first championship in 1995 or 96, right in there. And he ended up winning 5 or 6 world titles and really the grandfather of our sport. But I think Jack Nicklaus and a couple of those guys, I mean, they swung it and they had club head speed. They had fast hands. They had lower body. It was just the technology, because if you put the same wooden club in Bryson DeChambeau's hand today, he's not hitting it where he hits it, not taking anything away from him. But I'm saying if you just break down the athletes have been there.
Yeah.
I think the technology has gotten better. I think the ball compression has gotten more consistent. And I think you didn't know launch angle. You didn't know spin
Yeah.
rate. I
Yeah.
remember when I first started golfing, for that golf ball to go out through there and come up like that, I was like, man, that is the prettiest drive. That drive goes nowhere because it's got a ton of spin. That's why it went up. And so you learn that, it's a big difference hitting a golf ball that kind of goes up and then comes down than hitting a golf ball that starts there and kind of tumbles. when it hits. But yeah, I mean, going back to just the athletes, those one percenters, they were there in the 80s, smaller circle. They were there in the 90s. They got there in 2000s. I think today there's just a little bit bigger circle of guys that are just, I watch a Colton guy. I watched Zach Holton. I mean, you name it. Instead of when I competed, there might be 10 of us that were truly, some of the longest in the world.
Yeah.
I think today you might have 30 of them. You
Yeah.
might have 4 or 5 that is kind of one step ahead, but the majority of the guys today have figured it out, man. And whew, they pound a golf ball.
So how far are these guys hitting it now? Like what's winning drives now?
It really depends on the conditions. But I can tell you, it's almost like a bell curve. Back when we competed, it's like you get to that certain point in that bell curve, and it's like you can't hit it any further unless you're faster. Because you got to be faster to create more ball speed. You got to have more ball speed to have the flight, and then you got to go back to controlling launch angle, spin rate. But these guys today, I forgot what the guys used to say, but like 1 mile an hour was like 3 to 5 yards.
Okay.
So think about it. If I swung 215, then these guys are swinging 230 today. That's a big difference. And I'm not saying, oh, they would beat you in your prime by 50 yards. I don't think they would.
Yeah.
But there again, there's got to be a bell curve, and I think those guys, I tip my hat to those guys because I love watching them. And I do think they're longer today than we ever were, ever was. Some of the guys are like, no, Kevin, don't take away, man. Don't take away from the pioneers. But, man, I just think you got to give credit where credit's due. Those guys are in the gym. They figured it out. They train their bodies. They figured out their clubs. And they work at it. The top 10 guys, they're at it all the time.
Can you make a living? You got to obviously win, but is this a sport where you can make a living still, or like is your only job? I don't know.
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think the guys that compete today, I think it's a great side hustle. I think corporate outings for the guys that do a great job representing themselves and their brands. I think that market's still there. But no,
Yeah.
not like it was. I can tell you when I got in 2001 through about 2012, 2014. Yeah, you could, especially if
Yeah.
you won.
Yeah.
You win $250,000 world championship, and then the endorsements, and then a lot of people never realize, man. But I made all my money in corporate outings. That's where the money was, and I watched again guys like Brian Pavlik, Brian Nash, Dan Beaver, and I was like, man, these guys are killing it. What are they doing different? They were doing corporate outings.
I just thought of a story. I forgot about it until we were talking, and I remember it was one of the days where it was not the pro-am day, but it might have been like the Tuesday before where we did play at like Crow or at DCC, and it got rained out. So then remember we ended up going to like this Glens Creek course up in Scott County, and so you were just playing. You weren't like we. It wasn't like your regular event where you set up on a hole. You were playing with me, and I forget who was playing with us, but anyway, it was a shorter-ish par four, and it wasn't a dog leg, but you couldn't really see the green. It was like tree covered or whatever.
Was it when we were way up top? Oh
Yeah,
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 yeah. So then I just remember I was like, I think you can hit. I didn't know that you were going to hit it, but you hit it on the green, like you hit. But there was guys were putting, remember? So I felt like you could tell the story what happened, but holy smokes, that was interesting. I was like, wait a second. I think we're
yeah,
gonna get in a fight here.
yeah. It's crazy of all the years that you definitely hit into folks, and the majority of the time it's by accident, because you're like, well, it's 420 yards away, and all of a sudden you hit it, and it got a good hop, and it run right up. But I mean, I drove 2 par fours last Wednesday, and I've always been greeted by the four coming off the green going, "Hey, I want to meet who hit that." I
Right.
hit into Penny Hardaway uh, last year at the number 15. It was 362, little par four, and I hit it over the trees and it landed and they started yelling and it rolled up to about this close for a one. And I tapped it in for a two. And I went over to apologize to Penny Hardaway. And he thought the guy with me, because he was bigger than me, he was like, "Did that guy hit that ball?" And I said, "No, I hit it." And he was like, "Oh, you hit that ball from the
Yeah.
tee box?" And I was like, "Yeah," and it was crazy, man, because they think you got to be a big guy, but you got to have hands, you got to have speed, and obviously having a baseball background, being a switch hitter, to me, I felt like I had two right hands on the golf club. So yeah, I mean, it's still, you still drive it up there, but the majority of them go, "Hey, man, I want to meet that guy. I want to shake his hand. What are you eating?" And I had one guy say, "Man, would you pee in a cup?" And I said, "Man, you don't want gravy and biscuit all in that cup, Uh, look at me. I don't work out, and I sure don't work out. I wish I did. But yeah, we used to, man, and back in the peak of our, you know, tour and doing the reality shows, they say, "Man, what do you do, man? I bet you work out all the time." And I was like, "No, man, I go to Bojangles. I
Yeah.
eat gravy and biscuit. I
Yeah.
come hit a couple balls, and it
Yeah.
was more to me. It was a God given ability to hit a golf ball a long ways.
Yeah. I think that one of the other things that I like to talk to people about is how, you can take a sport or like something like this long drive and also the BMX and the baseball and translate it into creating a work ethic or to be successful at work. There's definitely parallels between, hey, look, if you're able to do this here, like for I'll give you running because that's kind of like what I do, but like
Oh yeah,
for as far as like putting together a plan, it's all about, I have to do the training and then setting goals for myself. And then I could take all of that stuff and translate it into a business plan for a specific thing at work. And you could see how the people that all they did was show up to work, and then they didn't have any other way of like learning how to deal with setbacks or like plans don't go as they always are and all that kind of stuff and figuring out how to change and dealing with adversity and all that kind of stuff just kind of like fizzle out. Whereas like a guy like you go and you learned how to be a nationally ranked BMX guy, and then you learned how to be an amazing baseball player, and now the long drive thing, and now golf. It's like, and now that to me, I feel like is translated in your career because like when I met you, I think you were in this business, but I think you've accelerated through to the next level in business and has
yeah.
to be related.
No, it does, man. And just sitting here listening to you, John. I mean, think of what allows you to do what you do. I mean, I remember back when we were seeing each other on a yearly basis. You did that 100-mile run. So one unbelievable mental aspect, right? Overcoming adversity, the challenges, the work ethic, the discipline, training, all those things correlate to success in the business world. And so I look back on everything, and I was raised by a very simple minded mom and dad. You show up late. I mean, you show up early. If you're only 15 minutes early, you're late. You stay um, after everyone else is gone. You don't cut reps. You don't skip, practice. You don't skip school. It was
Yeah.
the basics, man. And you
Yeah.
think about that, and you go into your sports. The ability, to overcome adversity, man. Baseball, you fail 70% of the time and you're a Hall of Famer. 70% of the time. Imagine me going to long drive and saying that 70% of the time I'm going to fail, or even failing more than that because, you don't run across a lot of victories in that sport. I mean, I know guys that did it for 15 years, might have won one or two times, and a lot of them were right there, two, three victories. So I feel like sports, if it did anything for me, it taught me that one, you got to work. One, you got to be willing to do what others are not willing to do. That correlates to today. that to me, I feel like that's why I've been blessed in the business space, is because I'm willing to do what others not willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to work on Saturdays, Sundays, willing to show up early, willing to stay late,
Yeah.
treat people how you want to be treated. I mean,
Yeah.
it just, it's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, if I was sitting here talking to a group of kids, I'd want every kid that I had, they played sports. And yeah, I want to win, and I want to do everything possible to win, and to give you the best chance to win. But at the end of the day, um, it's the discipline, it's the work ethic, how to overcome adversity, because you're going to fight adversity and challenges the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like, you got a small window to be like a great athlete, and that's at one sport, much less three sports. Like, you got such a small window. But the big window is what a lot of people don't talk about. What are you going to do? You know, that's what people used to say all the time. The average lifespan of an NFL player is like 3 years. What are you going to do the next 40 years?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, you know, in 2016, I stepped away from golf completely. I mean, I left the club. I didn't want to see them. Matter of fact, I took my clubs to my stepfather's house, put them in his basement, and said, if I go play golf, I'm going to have to make an effort to come out here and get my clubs. And when COVID came back around, I started golfing again, but I was burnt out, and I really felt like I was at a point in my life where I really needed to focus on my career. And it's crazy is, you know, I spent the first part of my career at Transamerica, but the second part of my career, I came to Aflac, and Georgia-based company here in um, you know, southern part of the state, and it's been life changing, and it's been life changing because I focused on one thing. You know, I focused on my clients, or I focused on my products, but it was around one thing. It wasn't trying to be a golfer and sell insurance at the same time, or it wasn't trying to, you know, play baseball and get a degree at the same time. It's the first time in my life I've been able to just focus in on one
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And that's, it's amazing. When I came to work here, I was at the Braves game in the in our suite behind home plate. And the president was there, Virgil Miller, and he said, "Well, tell me your background." I said, "Oh man, you know," I said, "I really just know sports and insurance." And he said, "Well, sports, you know, I was a big athlete." And I was like, "Oh, okay, what, you know?" And he said, "I played baseball." I said, "Well, I played a little baseball, and I kind of played it down." And he said, "Well, you know, what level did you play baseball?" I said, "Well, I played in the minor leagues." And I said, "I did a little golfing, won a, you know, a couple long drive championships." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, I've been on a couple of reality shows and raced bicycles." Well, he left and got his assistant to look me up. He didn't believe me. And so he called me Monday, the following week, and he said, "Man, you're legit. Like, I looked you up, man. You're bicycle and baseball and golf." And I said, "Man, I wasn't lying to you."
Yeah.
He said,
Right.
"No, man, like, you're legit, you know." And it's amazing. We still go back on that today, you know, some 10 years later. But um, I would tell any kid out there, man, like, play sports, man, and don't worry about winning. Just go about it the right way, man. Hustle on the field, hustle off the field. Pick your teammates up. Be a great teammate. You
Yeah.
know, be a leader in the dugout. Be a leader on the sideline. Because those things are going to go with you the rest of life. I got a son right now that plays inside linebacker at East Tennessee State. He might not ever see the field as an inside linebacker, but he shows up every day with his lunchbox. He works. He doesn't
Yeah.
skip a rep. He's got high character, and you know he's playing at a very, very high level. I mean, how many
Yeah.
kids get a chance to play D1 football? But
Not
he might
many.
not ever touch the field.
Yeah.
And what I like about him more than anything is I don't know if I could have done that, because I expected to be on the field and did this and did that, and I didn't play the football, and I probably would have never saw the field if I got a chance to play at that level. But I found a sport that I was competitive, or I was good at, and I made sure I got real good at it. And it was through that work ethic, showing up early,
Yeah.
staying
Yeah.
late, you know,
Yeah.
doing the things others not willing to do.
Yeah. It's funny. I just saw a video today, and it probably, I don't know when it actually happened, but it was the Baltimore Ravens. They're in camp right now. Did you see this video with Michael Phelps? They had him come and speak.
Oh, unbelievable.
Did you see it?
Um, yes. I mean, I mean, his work ethic and discipline, and talking about training for years,
Yeah.
for
But the
30
the the
seconds,
cool yeah, but the cool part was when he was saying like they asked him like I think Harbaugh was asking him about like what was it like to get to the starting blocks, in the Olympics? What were you feeling or thinking about the competitiveness of it? And he's like, look, he goes, I just knew that I worked harder and trained harder and did the stuff that the other people didn't want to do. He said, I just knew that I did it and he was ready to, perform. I think it's such a cool thing because I always talk about and I try to teach my kids like you're going to get out of something what you put into it, right? Same thing with the running. If I don't train for 6 weeks or whatever, how in the world am I ever going to run a race? You know what I mean? Like, so if you're not doing that stuff every day, like you're saying, show up, work hard, something might break, right? Like something might happen for you if you're working hard, or
Oh
just
yeah.
if you're trying to skate by, it's what you get out of it, what you put into it most of the time.
Well, I've always heard people say, "Man, Bullard, you're the luckiest guy I know." And I look back at
Yeah,
47 years old, and you create your luck, man. You put
yeah,
yourself, you prepare, you get yourself in the best shape as fast as you can be. You giving yourself as many chances to get lucky. And I tell people all the time, man, is I think that's what I did is I'm all about wash and rinse and repeat, and it works. And I don't care
yeah.
what you do. I don't care if you play tennis. I don't care if you play pickleball. I don't care if you play golf, baseball, basketball, football. It's repetition. And, how does that correlate into the business world today? I remember going through a leadership class with Rebecca Esposito, and she said, "How much time do you spend every day crafting your art in business?" And I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I spend 5 minutes,
Yep.
And she was like, "Well, did you do that in golf? What if you only spent 5 minutes practicing? Would you expect to win?" And I mean, it hit me even in my later years. It hit me like a freight train, man. And saying, how much time do I spend developing myself or my
Hmm.
craft in this day and time in the business space? And so those things apply to an 8-year old and they apply to a 48-year old.
Just saw this yesterday. Somebody had a graph of that, and because I like started later in my career, like doing training, like training dealers, training salespeople, training, and I whatever. And it was like a bar across the bottom, and it showed, um, how much time that you spend practicing versus playing the game, right? Like so, like if you think about like a Tiger Woods was like the best example. The guy played, probably 36 holes a day practice, and then you're only playing that sport, 4 days a week if you're lucky, right? You make it to the final or whatever. But like the same thing goes for your work. It's like you're always playing the game, but when are you going to train? When are you going to try to get better at skills that you could learn and make you better at your job? And it's like little tiny dots of training versus like the long line of like I'm just working. You hear it all the time where like people will say, "Well, I don't have time to do that." And you're like, "Well, okay. If you're not going
Oh,
to learn, then you're not going to get better." And the
yeah, you're
repetition
talking
thing,
about, yeah,
that
100%.
repetition thing is, like when I don't know who came up with that 10,000 hour thing, but I heard it on a podcast recently. I don't know if you know Andrew Huberman Lab, but he had on somebody and they were talking about it's not necessarily the 10,000 hours, it's how you spend those 10,000 hours, right? Like if you it's and it is repetition, right? It's they just equated it to like if you were going to become a good golfer, you need to be 10,000 hours equals so many hours a week times so many years, right? It's like 10 years of
Mhm.
time to be good at something. But it was really more about how many times can you hit that ball in practice to make it do what you want to do. It could be 1,000, it could be 10,000, but the
Oh,
repetition.
it's unbelievable. I mean, think of an Olympic sprinter, 10,000 hours for 10 seconds. And it's just unbelievable, but it correlates to it, man. And I tell people all the time, like, if you want to win and you want to win at a high level, you'll do it. You'll find a way to do it. Or you won't never win at a high level. A lot of parents this day and time don't want you to say little Johnny's not going to win if little Johnny don't put the work in, but it's true, and it,
Yeah.
it it doesn't matter. what you do in life. If you're not willing to put the work in, you're not willing to do what others not willing to do. You don't know how to handle adversity. You're not going to win. You're not going to win at anything.
Yeah. I got one last question for you because I don't want to take all your time, but it's probably going to take you a few minutes to answer it. And I've been thinking about this too. So when you started the conversation, you talked about you loved riding your bike and, you had your mom there to support you and your dad was working. And I feel like a lot of parents, like back then, 30, 40 years ago, two working parents, that's pretty much the norm now, even if you have two parents, right? It could be one parent. Long-winded question here, but so if you were to say, okay, you have two sons right now, and I see them, I see what you're doing with them and all that kind of stuff. But I also have been exposed to, because I had two girls, the parents that are so involved and so into it, and it's like they're trying to relive their youth and trying to relive their I didn't make it but I want my kid to make it life, that it puts so much pressure on these kids and they fail.
Yeah.
So how did you, knowing how you kind of learned and grew up, like how did you hold yourself back from being that way to your kids? You know what I mean? Like you didn't make it to the major leagues. Did you want your kids to be like pro baseball players? You know what I mean? You didn't, become a pro golfer, but you wanted your kid to. How did you like figure that part out? Because I see them, they look successful. They're pretty, you're doing a great job. So like how they could you give someone advice on whether you're pushing the pedal too much or how to back off? Because you definitely need some encouragement, but you don't want your kids to end up in that they get burnt out.
Yeah. Well, no, I think back when they were kids, I mean, the biggest thing I focused on is one, just showing them the fundamentals. If it was, football, it's athletic stance and it's proper tackling. If they're running this way, you got the head in front, you want to lock up, head up. But, my biggest thing, I was very, very hard on my boys. I wanted structure. I wanted discipline. I wanted to respect the game. I mean, my kids at 8 years old, they were the first one on the field. They were the last, first one off the field. Um, there was a way to go about it, regardless of if we won. We ended up winning a lot because we had a lot of kids that bought in to what I, was coaching or what I was preaching. And, we won a Dizzy Dean World Series. We won a Cal Ripken World Series. And, the 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. And I look at these kids today, they're 22, 23, 24 years old, and they still say that was some of the best days of their life. Now, some of their parents didn't like it. They didn't like how hard I'd run them. They didn't like if I pulled them out of a game. But I felt like, if you don't show a kid right from wrong, if you don't show a kid the right way to go about it, if you don't correct them, if they just grab that fence and they never realize that it'll shock them, then they'll never respect the fence. The hand in the cookie jar. If you don't let them know, they'll never know. And so I felt like I took a lot of heat. I was a single dad, raising my boys, and it's probably a blessing because I didn't have any second opinions of what I felt like was right from wrong. But I look at my kids today and people come up and they go, man, your son, he looks me dead in the eye. He introduced himself. He's got a good firm handshake. He opens car doors. He's respectful. And that's the way I raised him. And I felt like that's the way I was raised. And I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that as a society. But I go back to it is you want your kid to want to be successful more than you want your kid to be successful. And there's a big, I mean, that's one sentence, but it's a big sentence to unpack because I used to tell my kids, we'll go to the batting cages 5 nights a week, but you're going to ask me to take you to the batting cages. I'm not going to drag you to the batting cages. And that was my big motto. And I had one kid that I felt like drug me to the batting cage, and then I felt like sometimes I was dragging my younger boy. And, I looking back, my younger one was the best athlete, obviously playing D1 football, but he come to me his senior year and didn't want to play baseball. And I mean, it broke my heart, but I was like, man, if you're playing baseball for dad, I
Yeah.
don't want you to play. Like,
Yeah.
I want you happy. And he said, I want to focus on football and I want to go play D1 football. Now, my oldest kid, he wanted to be just like dad. He wanted to be a catcher. He wanted to do this. He wanted to do that. He works for me today. And he is phenomenal because he's by the books. He shows up early. He stays late. He's willing to work. He's willing to get dirty. He's willing to do the things the others not willing to do. And he did that at 8 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I remember having a busted nose and all the moms were like, oh, he's got to come out of the game. No, he doesn't. We're going to put 2 pieces of cotton in. He's going to go right back to shortstop. And that's the way he was. And he's as tough as nails, and he's been as tough as nails his entire life. And I tell people all the time, like, I've raised 2 young men that are survivors. You're not going to, make it so hard that they quit and go
Yeah.
on. And they're going to show up every day with their lunchbox ready to go to work. And that's the best thing I can say is
Yeah.
that you want kids to want to be successful. Whatever sport they're playing, they got to want it more than you want it.
Yeah. No, that's huge advice, and I feel like there's two things I'll say. Like I remember when if you want to talk about a time-consuming sport, swimming is probably the number one time sucker out of all the sports because they just are in the pool all the time. And so Aaron and Trinity both swam up into a point where it was like, I mean, and especially if you go to swim meets, if you've ever been in a swim meet, it's probably like a golf tournament, right? You're there for like 3 days or 2 days and it's all day. And like you said, you might swim for 10,000 hours but you watch them for 30 seconds and it was a time sucker. And I remember it became at one point where like, I forget if Trinity was like 13, probably 13. And we said, do you guys want to swim again? And Trinity said, hey, if we do, we can't do anything else. And I was like, forget it. It's over. We're done. Like they weren't enjoying anything else because they were just always swimming, you know? But that was a cool moment. They started playing tennis and I, you've met him and Erin is just, man, she is something, I'll tell you, stubborn, but she ended up playing soccer and I just wish she's so crazy because she's going to be a freshman in college, right? And so the other day
Wow.
she says to me, she's like, hey, do you think I should go out for the rowing team? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, in Iowa, they allow just walk-ons to go and try rowing. And meanwhile, she's in a boot because she hurt her foot. She can't even walk. She's like in a boot. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, try it, I hope so. But
I
anyway,
remember coming out there and having those girls. I'd wear those crazy
yeah,
loudmouth pants, and I'd take my picture with them. I remember when Aaron was in the first grade,
yeah.
so that kind of takes us right back down memory lane.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, Kevin, I really appreciate you doing this. I mean, I think that a lot of people will, that you've touched in along your journey. I think about you all the time. Like when I'm out there playing golf, I'm like, man, I just remember having so many really, I don't know what kind of conversations you want to call them, but life conversations, you know.
Real
Um,
conversation,
yeah,
and,
yep,
and that means the most to me, man, because you look back and you hope you made an impression. You hope you made a good impression, and because at the end of the day, that's really all we have is our word, our reputation, and I feel like I've been very thankful because I felt like I made a difference in a lot of people's lives. I felt like I always took the time to answer questions or
yeah,
give advice or to have a sidebar conversation. I feel like I was always approachable. Um, and I feel like I still am today, and I feel like I raised my boys that way. But um, it's also awesome to sit here and talk to a guy that really impacted my life a lot more than he thinks he did. And I used to tell him that every year. I was like, man, can you think we can do it one more year? And he's like, well, yeah, I think so. Let's check the budget and a lot of it's like I thank you so much, but then I remember being out at Coal Valley and the fireworks, and I do the show and hit the golf balls over the big excavators, and I might have added a lot more value than I thought I did. and made an impression upon your clients and just
Yeah.
the thousands and thousands and thousands of people over 15 years. It's great to catch up and kind of walk down memory lane. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this, Kevin. I will be in touch. I'll let you know. Usually what I'll do is I'll ask you to send me like a quick bio, couple pictures, and then I'll edit it all up and everything like that. But thank you for doing this.
You let me know what you need. We gotta connect. We've
Yeah,
been saying it for several
I
years
know.
now. So
I know it feels like every time I'm either in an airport, I'll try to reach out to you and I'm traveling somewhere, but without a doubt, either you're gonna come up here or I'll come down there.
100%. You got
All
it,
right,
Big
man.
Daddy.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you.
brother. See you, man.